another episode of Stand Up Memories.
That's exactly what you say every time.
That's
you
right.
have weeks and weeks to come up with a new way to say hello, and you do the same thing.
Yet another episode of Stand Up Memories. Jackie the Joke Man Martling in a good mood for
You could at least change the opening of the show as often as you change your act.
Well, I'm not getting rid of those Jimmy Carter jokes. I think they work.
And I have no right to say that. I did a gig the other night, and this guy said, "Oh, Jackie, how you doing, man? Like, it's been a while. I haven't seen you like 10 years." And I looked down, he was mouthing the jokes.
Peter Bales.
I don't care.
I'm Peter Bales, Jackie the Joke Man Martling, and boy, do we have a terrific guest with us today.
That's another thing he says every time.
We have a really special guest who I can vouch for because I've worked with him many times. A funny, gut-funny stand-up comedian, and we're going to talk about...
Now, I'm going to have to ask you what gut funny means.
It means you laugh from your gut. The laughter comes up from your gut.
So you weren't making a comment about my stomach?
I was not.
Okay.
No, I'm talking about a very funny comedian, Long Island based.
That is the best joke.
But works...
The one that gets the gut. I always tell people when I tell a joke, I tell dirty jokes because it gets the best reaction. I said the best reaction you can get from somebody is when they laugh and make a noise like you just punched them in the stomach. And that's a gut laugh. And if you get gut laughs, you belong on Peter Bales' show.
Well, John Ziegler...
And by extension, my show.
All right. That's Jackie the Joke Man Martling setting up our guest. And this might be the quickest we've ever gotten to a guest.
Well, let's ignore him for a little while longer.
Oh, no, we're not.
What's new with you?
Let's bring him up. Let's bring him out.
On?
I feel like an MC.
You've been dyeing your hair.
I am not done. Why am I dyeing my hair? We've got a great guest here, so I'm really apologizing.
It's a different color.
It's not. Now, John Ziegler is
I'm working with George Washington. Why don't you introduce the guest?
John Ziegler is here. John Ziegler
is from where?
Is a Long Island-based comedian, but he works everywhere. He is a national act. He works not only Nassau, but Suffolk County as well.
Wow, coast to coast.
Coast to coast, from Oyster Bay to Seaford. No, he works everywhere. He's back. He moved to Pennsylvania for a while and is thrilled to be back on Long Island. I want him to talk
Pennsylvania? What year is it there?
It's brutal in Pennsylvania.
Where were you?
Bethlehem, Pennsylvania.
Wow, I remember when Jesus was there. I actually worked at Sands Castle.
Yeah,
That's in Bethlehem.
It's called
right?
Wing Creek now.
Oh,
They
changed
changed
hands.
the name. They changed over.
I guess they didn't want anybody knowing that I was there.
Why was Pennsylvania? You're serious. Why did you find it so brutal?
Well, there's no comedy, first of all. It's like everything's an hour away.
Okay.
People are a little different. They're nice, but they're different. I'm a New Yorker. I like the pace of New York.
Okay.
What you're trying to say is they're too nice.
Yeah.
Like that gets old.
It got old quick. It's good for a weekend.
Yes.
And like any state, like Philadelphia is fantastic, but you get 20 minutes outside of Philadelphia, you're in Alabama.
Yeah, I was an hour from Philly. I was an hour from I was an hour from everything.
Okay.
So it was rough.
So it was rough. You were putting a lot of miles on the old car.
Yep. All my gigs were back here for the most part.
Wow.
So
Now you moved there for a reason?
Girlfriend had family, so I owed her after supporting me doing comedy for 13 years. So.
And you're back on Long Island, and is she back with you?
Yeah, we're getting married in September.
Oh, congratulations, John Ziegler, engaged to be married.
Are you applauding that?
I'm applauding that because
I think that's great.
I think it's terrific.
We've been dating like 24 years. It's
Okay, so
not
she understands
that
that
dramatic
you're
of a-
out at night and busy on weekends.
Understands it. Sounds like if it's been 24 years, it sounds like she's a great deal beyond understanding.
Well, obviously you know what you're doing and she knows what she's doing, and that's wonderful.
But that's it. Not to be stroking you, but you look very young to have been with a woman for 20, don't say nothing, 24 years. If you met her when you were 20, that makes you 44. Are you 50?
55.
Wow,
See, he
you
looks
are
good.
very well preserved. You
hear
look
that?
like a Marine that could go in the front lines tomorrow.
Well, you don't know this, but I do know this, and
Well, why don't you brag about what you know and what I don't
What
know?
I
Because
know
you're a
is we
history
have
professor.
we not
you
only-
probably know about Napoleon. Oh, God, do you want my job? Do you want to sit here with this guy?
what you're going to like what you're about to hear, because not only is he a
you don't want to bet, right?
No,
I'll
you're
bet you
going to like.
$20.
You were going to like this because he's a terrific comedian who has been challenged more than most comedians by far that I can think of.
To a fight?
And he is in a fight now and is succeeding, and I want him to talk about that.
I
Fighting.
hope that you're intrigued, because that is a word that has never found its way into this stupid show. We do funny stuff, hopefully, interesting stuff. We have fun people, but never has anything been intriguing. So I have to say one word. I'm intrigued.
You're intrigued. Well, you should be intrigued. This man is fighting pancreatic cancer with
Ouch.
everything he's got successfully and continuing to work as a comic.
I did not mean to
and-
make light. I had no idea. We
and-
do not talk to the comics before, and I do not talk to Peter in between shows, but that's nothing professional. That's just because like
No, that's just
very
a,
boring. I
a
want
lack
nothing to
of
do
preparation on Jack. No, Jackie is a method comedian who thinks that we will lose.
Method. You just want to be spontaneous.
But
so that's, and so you're working, and
Yeah, I'm back to working full. I never really stopped, even when I was
Right,
sick.
I know that.
I mean, couldn't do what I wanted to do, but I worked through it the whole time. But now I'm back to doing it. I'm working more now than probably before I was sick.
well,
getting
you know,
a
the
lot of,
reason is because you're funny.
Yeah.
And he has a special out with, given his situation, the title wrote itself, right? I mean, it's such a terrific, tell us and the
the
audience.
trouble with something like this, it's like when you're on the phone with somebody. Oh, you know, how's your sister? Well, she. Blah, blah. You don't want to make light of it, but you're like he said. I'm intrigued. Like, are you in remission? Or are you know?
Yeah, they don't call it that. I'm cancer free right now, but I go for scans every 3 months and.
But you've had it for a year, 5 years.
26 months.
26 months.
Yeah, so I did surgery, I did a bunch of chemo, and now it's just follow-ups. But I'm like a 10%er. It's like a very small. So pancreatic cancer is not good.
No, and how did you stumble on it? I mean,
My pee was dark. That was it. And I went to urgent care, and they're like, you should probably get to a hospital.
and how many people look at that and go, it's nothing. I'll
I did for like a week, but at a certain point, you're like, well, that's not normal.
Listen to the name of his special,
It's called Getting My Affairs in Order.
Getting My Affairs in Order.
And I wrote a joke.
As somebody who's done that already, I'm not going to smile at that.
Well, no, I mean, it's a comedy special, and it's very funny because I've seen it. And
Wow.
where can people watch it?
It is on YouTube. So it's John Ziegler Comedy. It's Z-I-E. That's how you spell my last name. And it's John Ziegler Comedy. So it's on my website. It's on YouTube.
Say
I have a
that
YouTube
it's
channel.
Z-I-G?
Z-I-E-G.
Z-I-E-G.
L-E-R. Yeah, Ziegler.
L-E-R.
Ziegler.
Yeah, so it's just John Ziegler Comedy, and you can find it.
So you address the whole thing, and
Yeah, I did a 45-minute special. The first like 20 minutes, I played the hits, like jokes that I wanted to put in my special. And then the last like 20-something minutes, it's all just about my cancer story. I wrote it from my hospital bed. It was the easiest I ever wrote comedy. Because every
Wow.
day stuff was happening, and I just kept a pad by my bed, and I would
now
write
is
it
this
down.
something it's eating you up, but was it super painful?
When I was sick?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Not that, yeah, I had what's called sepsis twice. I did like 60 days in the hospital.
That's nasty
Had a
stuff.
bad surgery, and chemo was not fun, but I feel great now. So I
Well,
feel like
great.
I feel like nothing happened for the most
Well,
part.
I think you are somebody people can look up to, your fight and how you're dealing with it. I want to ask you, when you process this.
Now, what was tougher,
on.
going through the cancer or keeping your girlfriend at bay for 24 years?
That's how we got engaged. 'Cause I pretty much thought I was dying. I knew what I had, and she's like, I'm like, I guess just I can be married for 6 months. How hard is that going to be?
Yeah, that's like tipping the funeral director on your way into the hole. You know?
So
That's kind of what it was.
when
Sorry.
when you got the horrible diagnosis, how long before you knew in your heart and in your brain that you had to do a special?
The second they told me.
Really?
First two thoughts were, I got to call my girlfriend because they thought I had a problem with my gallbladder. I thought I was getting gallbladder surgery. So she was working, I was in the hospital, and then I found out, and I had to call her. That was first thought. Second thought was, I got to shoot a special. Because comedy is all I love. That's all I've done for 15
So
years.
I don't know you like he does. How long have you been in the game? Like,
15 years.
So you had been at it for
Yeah, I lived it for
a long time.
Yeah, I mean, except for the pandemic, which affected us all.
Yeah,
I
but
lived
that's,
it.
You did.
That's
live
a space of time
yeah,
that
it's a
we
space
all
of
kind of just taken through, you know.
So yeah, it was my whole life.
The traveling around and the
Traveling
whole.
around, you know, city open mics, everything I started with.
Now, where did you live? On Long Island?
Yeah, I grew up in Bethpage, and the Governors Clubs were my home clubs. That's where I started, and slowly but surely I started getting road gigs, and you know the game, and.
He's lived it. And it seems like immediately you knew you wanted to make a record of your work, your body of work.
Yeah, it was literally, I had two things. I've always wanted to write a screenplay, which I don't know anything about. So I'm like, well, I can definitely get the special done. I have enough time for that. But I don't think I'm going to have time to write a screenplay. So I forgot about that.
Did they give you any kind of, this could be like, scenarios of what could happen or how long? Or
Yeah, I got a surgeon who's very optimistic. So he's Mr. Everything's going to be great. But I know the numbers. I have Google.
Right.
I know.
Right,
I Googled it.
right.
I'm like, this isn't.
Right.
So the only guys I know had pancreatic cancer were like Alex Trebek, the guy from Dirty, Patrick Swayze,
Yes.
Steve Jobs.
Uh-huh.
And they were all gone in 8 months. So I wasn't feeling very optimistic.
So you're beating the odds sitting right here.
Yeah. I'm like, people, it's
no,
funny.
what do you mean beating it? It's not that tough to get booked on this show.
Okay, Jackie, let me explain. I mean beating the odds in his fight against cancer.
You didn't say that.
Okay. Well, let's now you
If you
took
could make things we would have a lot more viewers if you made things clear.
we would. Okay, well it's clear now.
So you're obviously beating the odds.
Yeah, I don't talk about it.
Yeah, knock on wood and that
But
whole
in your
thing.
special you talk about it and you make humor about a very difficult.
And I've got I was nervous to do it. Because when I wrote it, I'm like, who's going to let me do 30 minutes of cancer jokes? Everybody's very uptight. And I have had zero pushback at all. It's been nothing but positive feedback and
Because
support.
by the time you're 55, 75, 105, we all have friends, family that have cancer, had cancer. So everybody relates, happy, sad, whatever, to the good news, the bad news. Unfortunately, it's captivating.
I only get because I usually introduce it like midway through my act. Nobody has any idea. So when I initially bring it up, I get the pullback and the awes. That's over in 30 seconds.
Yep.
Once I start getting into the act, they're fine. So I'm still figuring out the easiest way to bring it up. Now I just tell people straight out. I just get right into it.
Right,
But
but I mean,
I'm sure it strikes everyone different. Like a guy could be like, wow, and a girl could be like freaked out. Who knows,
I can read in a comedy club, it's easier because I can see everybody.
Right, exactly.
So sometimes I'll see like a husband grab his wife's hand and squeeze it. And I'm like, well, somebody over there, I can see it. If
Okay.
you're in a theater, I can't see anybody.
Now, an obvious question, when we're done with our shows, we all sell stuff or take pictures or greet the audience. How often do people come up to you and say, I'm a cancer survivor, I'm dealing with it right now?
I can't count how much I get.
Unbelievable.
Emails after shows.
Thanks for doing that.
Yep, all of that. I get
all right,
that.
and how do you feel when you interact with people who reach out to you like that?
It feels good because it's a different
like it.
It's a different connection than me doing like my joke about Dunkin' Donuts or something. It's a much more personal connection. It's a weird thing because I don't want to be the cancer comic. I'm a
So
comic.
you don't wield it like, I can't believe you're not laughing. I got cancer. The least you can do is laugh. You don't do that.
No, never. I don't guilt them. I don't want the pity.
What he's done is he's taken cancer.
What do I got to do? Lose a limb?
How sick do I got to be?
But you've done it. It's incredibly difficult to make that subject humorous. You've done it. So give yourself credit. And
Cheers.
You're not going to be the cancer comic because you have a body of work that is still funny. Cancer didn't take your previous act and make it unfunny. And it's wonderful. And you see both in the special, which is so wonderful about the special.
I decide when I'm on stage if I'm going to talk about it.
Right.
It's like sometimes I don't know when I go up there, and I can feel out an audience, see how things are going, and maybe halfway through I go, I think I'm going to do all the cancer jokes. Like I did it New Year's Eve, and it was an older crowd, and it was not a good call on my part.
Right.
Yeah, I was
They're
like,
a little too close to the finish line.
Yeah, I looked around. I'm like, all right, this is.
So you take a look at an audience, or maybe even in your act, while you're on stage, you make a call?
Yeah, sometimes.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's really, you can't tell beforehand, I guess, what they're going to go for, what they're not going to go
Also,
for.
depends on how long of a set I'm doing.
Right.
If I'm doing a spot, if I'm doing 10 minutes.
Right.
I don't have enough time to be like, I got cancer. Good night, everybody. Like, I don't want to.
But we all do that. When I go out, I always look at the crowd and assess the entire crowd, and then do the exact same thing. That's how I do it.
Yeah.
What I do is I look at the crowd, and if they're young and I realize they've never heard of Jimmy Carter, I say to myself, do your jokes. Teach them who Jimmy Carter was.
Give them both barrels.
So like last weekend, or 2 weekends ago, I spoke for Northwell. I was like a keynote speaker for Northwell, and it was 1,500 cancer survivors, which I guess I didn't pay attention because I thought I was speaking to medical staff.
Right,
Okay.
right,
And when I
right.
showed up, I'm like, oh, they all have cancer? So I did 15 minutes of cancer jokes, and it went great. I was really shocked afterwards, the response I got. So, it's kind of cool to get that feeling.
Oh, cool. It's got to be a terrific feeling.
Wow.
And I had to follow he's the saxophone player for Billy Joel. He's the original sax player for Billy Joel.
Richie?
Richie Cannata, yes.
He has cancer, or he was in the show?
He's in remission, but he's in the show. He was the other speaker with me. He had non-Hodgkin's, I'll pronounce it wrong, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. He had a pretty bad.
You know what? And it was a while back, right?
About 7 years ago.
Because I know him fairly well, and I'm not sure if I knew that and forgot it, but
And he's back.
a
He's
lot
back
of people
with Billy.
keep that. They keep that under the hat. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. He was, and I was 4 feet away from him, watched him do New York State of Mind with his other band.
Oh, wow.
And man, was he good. I'm like, I have to follow that.
Lords of Flatbush.
Lords of 52nd
Lords of 52nd
Street. 52nd Street, yes.
They're so great.
The kid's amazing. The kid who played the organ and sang, his name's Dan Orlando. He looks like he's about 18.
And they sound just like Billy.
So talented. So I was like, I'm getting uncomfortable. Like, I have to go up now? After
And
a
yet it
standing
went
ovation.
great when you did.
Everything went great.
Because it's music and it's kind of
it
apples
worked.
and oranges.
They set
you
it
know.
up very nicely. It was a very well-run event.
What would you want people to know who've never had cancer? Have you had people awkward when they try to talk to you or they don't know what to say? What would you say to them? Like, relax? Or what would you say? Honestly, people who, and you probably can relate this, people who've never had cancer don't know sometimes how to talk to people who are dealing with it.
Yeah, most of
Well,
my
that's what
friends-
I was saying before. If you're on the phone, somebody says, "Oh, my sister has cancer." What? Sorry, what do I do? You know what?
Most of my friends are comics. So in the hospital, I got like I call them, my civilian friends would call me, and it was like, we're saying prayer. Like, how many times can I tell the same story?
Right,
in prayers?
Right.
The comics, I guess that's how we express affection. They just roasted me.
Right.
There
They
wasn't
come
a
in
lot-
and bust balls, and
Yes,
it's a relief.
exactly. And
It's
it
a
felt
relief.
good. So Mick Thomas, Mick,
Yes.
texted me. I kept it under wraps that I was sick. I don't want anybody to know. I was in ICU.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, my phone starts buzzing like 100 text messages. And I call my girlfriend. I go, "What's going on?" Like, I didn't tell anybody. Chris Roach, friend of ours, posted a beautiful thing on Facebook without my knowledge. So next thing I know, 500 people are calling me.
Right.
I'm like, she's like, Roach put a post up that said, "John Ziegler, great friend of mine, very like underrated comedian."
He didn't mean it.
No, I called him up and I said,
Yeah.
"Roach," and he goes, "I know, I'm sorry." And I go, "Underrated comedian?" Like, that's what
Right. That's
So Mick texted me, which I thought was great, and he wrote, "John, I heard what's going on. I'm really sorry. Anything you need at all, just call me. I have nothing but time." And I put my phone down.
and are there any gigs you're not going to be able to make it?
Well, his second text, it's hard to have comedic timing through text.
Yeah.
right.
He
Right.
texted back after he said, "I have nothing but time," and it buzzed again. I pick it up and said, "Unlike you."
Oh God.
But he waited like 3 beats on the text. I'm like,
Right,
man, that was good. And,
right.
That made me feel good.
Mick Thomas, he's talking about, an Irish comedian booked on the show in the future. And Chris Roach has been on our podcast. We love those guys.
Yeah, both good friends of mine.
And
So.
to the people at home, this is proof from John. When comedians insult each other and roast each other, it's a sign of affection and trust.
Not when I do it to you.
There are exceptions, but am I right? I mean, it's
Absolutely,
It is
absolutely.
when I'm kidding.
That's what made me feel the best.
Man, I can
That's nice.
imagine you're lying there and you got 1, 2, 3, 4 civilians. It must
Same
sound
con-
ugly
it's the
to
same
people at
conversation.
home.
Same conversation.
And all of a sudden you see a comic come walk in the room and it's like, you know.
Oh,
I had no visit. I didn't let anybody visit me. My girlfriend was the only one I allowed, and my family, of course. But
Right.
I didn't friends. You got tubes in you, so I don't want people coming in.
Right.
But text, Roach doesn't really sleep, Chris Roach. So it felt like a lot like a booty call at night. It was like 2:30 in the morning. You don't sleep in a hospital. They're taking your blood pressure every 4 minutes.
Right,
so I would
right.
text Roach at 2 in the morning. I'd be like, "You up?" It was like a booty call, and he was always awake. So he would always
He's
be
a
like,
great
"Oh,
Oh,
character.
that's
sorry."
nice.
Great
That's
character.
nice.
So it helped me a lot. We would talk from like 2 to 4 in the morning.
Ah, that's
Yeah, it really
that's great
helped.
to hear.
So,
You know what we do on the show? We sometimes ask comedians.
We never have sex with each other.
We don't do that. You're right. But we sometimes ask comedians about the worst times they've had on stage, because you'll agree 99% of the time the shows are great and a lot of fun.
even bad shows are fun.
Right, because great shows are nowhere near as memorable as the horrors.
Yeah, I can't think of a show where I was like, let's just get like where I was angry or annoyed. Like even if it bombed, I was just kind of like, oh, that was brutal. But I'm with my friend. We're getting paid to do this.
Right, right,
You know, car ride home, we'd laugh about how rough it was.
right.
But I've had shows that didn't go well, but I don't really have horror stories.
Fights breaking out, or the power going out, or a blizzard where you couldn't get out of the club. That's what comics talk about at the diner, because most of the time, the shows are wonderful. And you're right, even when they're bad,
They're still good.
they're still good.
Like I had a joke once. You know, sometimes you get humbled in this very quickly.
Yes.
I was doing really well. I had a stretch where I was just doing well. Every show I was killing, and I got a little. And I wrote a joke about.
Waiting for the shoe to drop.
Yeah, but I started to get a little. So I told my friend, I got this joke, but it's a friend of mine, Jordan Louderback, funny comic.
Yes.
Something happened to us, and he has cerebral palsy, and I had a joke, and I mentioned that he has cerebral palsy. And my friend's like, I don't think you can do that joke. And I'm like, yeah, I can. I know what I'm doing.
Okay.
And I had a great set I was killing. I did the cerebral palsy. I've never heard a room change direction so quickly. Yeah, like on a dime, and things switched. And you come off and you just laugh. My friend looks at me and goes, yeah, I can do it. I got it.
So he
I
went
made it
first.
Right, you got a little
He went
cocky.
first. He went first, and they liked him, and then you went, and you thought you could get a dig in, and they.
It didn't go well. It was a bad call. But that just, but that stuff I just laugh at in the car
Yeah, I
ride
know.
home.
It's so wild how an audience acts as one, and there's no thing connecting them. Because I remember long ago that this guy went up in Fort Lauderdale, and he turned them off. But then trying to get them back, he turned them off more, and he had them so deep in a hole. It was where the comics the comics always come running into the room to watch somebody go into the toilet. And he was so buried. And I was on next. And I was no great shakes. This is 40 years ago. But I was on my way up. And he shook my hand. He said, you'll never get these people. You'll never get these people. And from the first word, I had them rolling. Not because of me. They were just so glad that I wasn't him. But it was like like you said, an about face, and that, as one. It's amazing.
Because the audience wants to have a good time. They're out. They're on your side. I've followed people in that situation, and they're ready to laugh. They are ready to laugh. That's funny though. What happened?
Yeah, I've had a few bad gigs.